Welcome to the Journals of the Information Entrepreneur with Leadership Through Data. I'm your host, Jacqueline Stockwell. Each week, I'll be talking to information leaders across the world about topics from information management, AI, privacy, data protection, public speaking, and other essential skills. I call this podcast the Voices of Influence. My goal is to empower and inspire information leaders to step out of their comfort zones, be bold, be brave, and be beautiful. Hope you enjoy the show. Hello, welcome to Leading the Way, a podcast series where Leadership Through Data and Karma talk about how leadership and records and information management come together. We're going to be exploring some really important issues faced by Karma with content and key influencers from the region. In this series, we're going to cover a wide range of topics, and today I'm super excited that we're going to be talking to Stephen and understanding the legal aspects of records and information management. I'm your host, Jacqueline Stockwell, a multi-award-winning dyslexic entrepreneur and CEO and founder of Leadership Through Data. Now, I empower information leaders globally, focusing on personal and professional development. As an international public speaker, I aim to inspire, motivate and educate in every presentation or podcast I deliver. My goal is to continue to make information management training engaging and useful through storytelling and visual aids. And that's what this session is all about, for you to learn today, have fun and take away. So we're now going to be talking to Stephen. So Stephen, tell me about yourself and how you got into RIM.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. My name is Stephen Dwoya. I'm a Records Management Practitioner with the government of Kenya. So I got into records management quite a while back. I've actually practiced record and information management for about 20 years now, joining the field in the year 2005, straight from the university. And I would say getting into the course to study information sciences was not really a choice that I deliberately made. My thought was to get into communication, but unfortunately I was not able to get an opportunity to study communications. So I got into information sciences, which equally incorporates a bit of communication. So in my study of information sciences, I was able to undertake studies in library studies, records management, a bit of public relations and IT. So upon graduation, I began my career as a librarian, having studied library science as part of my course. So I did library work for about 5 years, setting up a library for an academic institution that was just commencing to offer IT courses and a few of some business courses in partnership with the NCC UK. Yeah, so at the end of the 5 years, I thought it was now time to shift from library and get into the other fields of information sciences. So I got into records management with the government and began as a records officer, joining an organization that was purely managing records from a manual perspective. And by the time I was done with them, in 3 years, we had digitized the records. I left, hopefully they're continuing with the digitization process. I've not been back there. I'm in a new engagement currently, where I have been for the last 10 years. And we're making headways. We're making headways in managing records and trying to follow up with the emerging trends.
Wow. So you left your legacy there. I love that. And I just have to ask.
Yes.
You've done archives and records.
Yes.
Do you love what you do now?
I do. I love what I do. One reason as to why I love records management is because it's the easiest way to get to understand an organization, because you interact with information on a daily basis regarding the company or the organization that you're working for, from the mandate to the core values, to the objectives of the company. You're able to get engaged into the development of the strategic plan, being a key member in information management, and as well as being part of the ISO standardization teams. So you get to learn so much about an organization, because records is actually a bloodline of an organization. That's the point through which information passes to get to the other members of the organization. So I enjoy what I do.
I love that. I love that bloodline and knowing. There's just some really good things there. Thanks. So
Welcome.
what kind of laws do you follow?
There are various laws in Kenya that govern or guide records management. So there are laws that have been issued by the government, and various circulars, we call them government circulars, that are issued from time to time that guide on the management of records. So of course our mother law is the Constitution of Kenya, which in itself gives a right to access to information to all Kenyans. Yes, we also have the Public Archives and Documentation Services Act, which we consider as the mother act for records management in the country. So it's the guiding regulation for records practitioner. It sets up the Kenya National Archives and Documentation Services, which has actually been given the mandate to inspect various government agencies in matters records management, determine if you're complying with the laws, and even go ahead and demand the transfer of records in these government agencies to the National Archives if they are considered to be of archival value. We also have the Records Disposal Act, which largely focuses on disposal of court records. These are legal records. So basically, matters that have gone to court are actually disposed on the basis of the Records Disposal Act. We have Data Protection Act, which came into play the other day. That is in 2019. So it's the new kid on the block. And the association has actually been working very hard to train the various professionals on how data protection ties up with records management, because it's largely to do with your data, personal data, to ensure that personal data, either within the company or in the nation at large, is not abused. So we have Data Protection Act. We also have Access to Information Act. When I began, I mentioned the fact that the Constitution of Kenya gives rights to the citizens of Kenya to access information. Of course, there are various disclaimers to it. So there is information that may be of some security matter that you may not be allowed to access. But generally, public information is meant for all. So we also have the Official Secrets Act that binds government officials as well as various Kenyans in certain positions to an oath of secrecy, not to disclose information that may jeopardize the company or jeopardize the nation. So most of this information actually is in record forms. So the Official Secret Acts binds us not to share this information without authority of the accounting officers. We also have what we call the Communications Act. The Communications Act, one of the things that this act has done is to incorporate electronic records as admissible records. Together with the Evidence Act, these records are now admissible in courts of law. Initially, they were not. But right now, things like the electronic signature have been recognized as a part of an official record. So there are very many laws that guide us on the management of records. We have the circulars from the Department for Personnel Management that tell us the various applications that are to be made on personnel records within the agencies. We have what we call the Public Procurement Act that guides us on procurement records. We have the Finance Act that guides us on the management of finance records. So there are very many laws and regulations that actually guide us on the management of records. And I would say the laws differ, based on a legal system of a country, and various other issues.
Oh, brilliant. And it's exactly as you said, it's bloodline, isn't it? So you think of all those sort of like legal frameworks you just explained about, they're definitely all the that goes through an organisation.
Yes, yes.
So you talked about sort of like the frameworks that you follow now and the legal, and how do you interact with international standards?
Um, I would say records management may have begun much earlier in Africa because we have various ways through which information was passed. So there were carvings in caves. Yeah, people in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, we see the writings on papyrus reeds. So there was some kind of records management that was taking place. But largely, Africa derives records management practice from the global standards, mainly the ISO standards. And so our interaction with these standards have enabled us to be able to develop policies that have allowed us to have formal frameworks for the management of records. Now, this enables a universal practice, meaning that if I came to the UK today as a records practitioner, there are various records management standards that are applicable both in the UK and in Kenya. And I would say, focusing on the provisions of ISO 15489 on the management of records, you'd actually see that the application of records is almost universal across the board. And so besides the formal framework for the management of records, we also have issues of uniformity that enables one to work anywhere. We are also able to derive best practices, and from best practices you can actually be able to assess where you are and what you need to do to be able to get to a better place. So I believe the global standards have actually played a great role in as far as records management is concerned in Africa. And probably just besides that, our laws equally comply to the global standards. Now, if you look at the Data Protection Act that recently came into play in Kenya, it is largely derived from they call it the GDRP. Yes, so it's largely derived from that. GDPR, sorry, yeah, GDPR, yeah.
Yeah.
GDPR, yes, yeah. So our law is actually, it's largely derived from that. So trying to, what I would say, comply with the universal law. Yes.
Yeah, and that formulating best practice in Kenya based on GDPR.
Yes, GDPR, yes.
So what's the biggest challenges that your country faces, Kenya faces, in terms of information management?
One of the things that I would say is a major challenge is the organizational structures in various organizations that have placed records management professionals at lower levels. Now, that hinders decision making, because if you have an organizational structure that has a managing director, probably the directors, various managers, and then you place the records practitioner at probably the third or the fourth level within the structure, that hinders the speed through which information or decision making is made, because you have almost 3 or 4 lines of reporting before you can get to the accounting officer. So that largely hinders the development of good policies in the country. And then we have what we call staff establishments. Our staff establishments provide for very few records practitioners. So in an organization that probably generates millions of records in a year, you'd find that the establishment only provides for 2 or 3 records practitioners. So most of the times they're overwhelmed in managing these records. So our staff establishments are actually a challenge in as far as good record management policies are concerned. Inadequate resources, I cannot underscore that here, especially when it comes to finances. We rely on partners, we highly rely on the government, and as a records practitioner, if you cannot clearly articulate the benefits that the organization will derive from your practice, then the amounts of money that are allocated to you are totally limited. So that comes in as a challenge. And then we also have issues of support from management. A lot of top management is not well informed, or if they are, they do not give emphasis on the importance of records management. And so with that lack of support, it almost becomes very difficult to be able to develop a cross-functional team to help in the development of a records and information management policy. Yeah, and I will also look at the bodies. Like we only have one body, the Kenya National Archives and Documentation Services, that has come actually into play through the Public Archives Act to help in records management within the nation. Now, if you look at the numbers at the National Archives, they're quite few, very few staff. They can work with various government agencies in the development of these policies. So it's quite a big challenge that the regulator is not well staffed to be able to guide on matters records management. We also have issues of corruption in Africa, where records management is seen as evidence, yeah, that would clearly implicate and get people jailed. So they would rather that you have a poor records management practice that would not get them implicated or not come as evidence when the evidence is needed in court. Yeah, so that's another challenge. Yeah, so you find that there's very little support, because if you have a good records management practice, of course we say information will speak. Yeah, you do whatever you want to do, but the records are going to cry out if you mess up. Yes, and so people don't like that, so they'll ensure that they stifle records management as a practice, so that then their acts are not, they're not seen. Yeah, so they try and hide their trails. Yes. So we also have training. There's very inadequate training, especially on digital records. So you'll realize many of the records management policies are largely missing the aspect of digital records, because most of the records practitioners are not properly trained on matters digital records. Yeah, so that equally hinders a good records management policy. There are very many issues.
Yeah, but they sound similar to kind of, obviously some are quite different, but
Yeah.
in terms of sort of the budgetary, the sort of the loan information manager,
Yes.
those the things that challenges globally.
Yes.
What do you think? What would you suggest? How people can, stick to those rules, stick to those legal frameworks? What could they do?
Or how people, how do we stick to the legal frameworks?
Yeah, so obviously you talked about the legal frameworks.
Yes.
How can organisations make sure they follow both the sort of local and global rules?
Okay, first of all, I would say organizations need to ensure that they employ professionals who are members of an association, because it is in these associations that you're able to interact with other records practitioners and you're able to learn the new trends in the practice. So that is the first thing that organizations need to do to ensure compliance. Yeah, employ professionals who are part of the Records Management Association, either locally or globally. So we have Karma in Kenya, we have Esabika in East and Southern Africa, and of course the International Council of Archives. Organizations should equally ensure that they provide budget for records management. So if you may not necessarily get the whole budget, but if you can stagger it and get certain amounts, you can actually be able to make small wins each and every year, and you're able to grow the records management practice. Because without budgetary allocation, there are so many regulations that are violated. Regulations regarding security of records. So you have a poor budget, that means your records may not be secured because you may not be able to afford cabinets to keep the records. You have a poor budget, you may not even be able to afford a system with its licenses to digitize your records. Yeah, so there are issues of non-compliance due to poor budgetary allocations. As well, organizations need to invest in capacity building, continuously train staff. Yeah, not necessarily locally, even internationally. Get your staff to some of these countries that are doing well in records management. Yeah, so they're able to see and appreciate that records can be a very important and strategic department in an organization. Otherwise, if you relegate it and just look at it like another government regulation that we need to have records management as part of our structure, we're getting nowhere. We're getting nowhere. Yes.
And as you said right at the start, records management is blood and oxygen of an organisation. So
it is.
Absolutely. And, we can't live without them.
Yes.
So obviously monetary budgets are an issue, but how can information professionals stay up to date with latest trends? Because you've got technology, you've got all the sort of AI. How would you suggest that they keep up to date? I know you said about training internationally, globally.
Yes.
And kind of, I'm thinking other things.
Associations, interactions. Yes, like we are interacting right now. Yeah, get to interact with others. Get out of your silos. Get out of your cocoons. Get to know what your partners are doing in other organizations. Yeah, because you may think you're doing well in your company, then move on to another company and you realize that they're way above you. Yeah, so we as practitioners must keep ourselves abreast with what is happening in the world. Read. Yeah, get onto the internet. Google is free. Read.
Yeah.
Get to know what Australia is doing. What is the UK doing? What is happening in America? What are the latest technologies? Blockchain, AI. Yeah, get to understand some of these technologies and how would you apply them in your organization. There are areas that you may not necessarily require so much funding. You can actually be able to get onto the internet and build yourself and be able to implement whatever you've learned.
Absolutely. And blogs are free as well. You've got books.
Exactly.
You've got podcasts like we're doing today. So,
yes.
They're all kind of free but educational tools that can help information records managers.
Thank you for listening to the Journals of the Information Entrepreneur with me, Jacqueline Stockwell. I hope you found this episode inspiring and helpful and have some takeaway tips that can be useful to you. If you liked this episode, please like, review and share it with your friends. Your support helps us reach more information leaders to stay inspired and listen to great content. Want to test out your strengths and weaknesses and measure it against our Empower framework? Please complete the scorecard. It's a great way to improve and evaluate your skills. You can find the scorecard at the end of the description of this podcast. Stay tuned for a new podcast every Thursday and remember to be bold, be brave and be beautiful.